Don't use your imagination, use your imagine heaven. Welcome to the show that exposes the deceptive narrative of government and religion, bringing a new light of truth to the masses, and sure to make your congressman cringe. Hi family, welcome to the show. Man, I gotta tell you, another great day. I'm glad to be here. We got a great show for you today. Are we being deceived by the Roman death cult, the crucifiers of Christ? And if we are, would you want to know? So, in the movie The Matrix, Morpheus reaches both of his hands out and he says, "You know, all I'm offering you is the truth." But Morpheus was a deceiver. Morpheus, right? The red pill and the blue pill, Republican and Democrat. Both pills offered by the same guy, or the same government, or same institutions. And it's a trick. Look, I've got the truth in one hand and that in the other, and neither one of them is the truth. So are we being deceived by the Roman death cult? Sure we are. So let's just have a look. Let's see if that we can prove that that's true or show that that's true. So let's have a look at some Roman buildings, buildings from the Roman Empire, right? So these things right here, the Roman columns. That's the, I guess you would say, the key building design for Roman government buildings and or buildings of the Roman Empire. So the Romans weren't known as the most kind rulers, and that's the thing. They forced their rule on other people, and they went out and conquered other lands and stuff like that. Well, these are the buildings of D.C. And they look just the same, don't they? And these are the buildings of religion. And they look eerily the same too, don't they? So, if these are Roman buildings, why do we have Roman buildings? And the Romans were the folks that crucified Christ in the biblical narrative. Why are we building Roman buildings that are representations of the bad guy, unless the Roman Empire never collapsed? What if it was subterfuge, right? What if they spread out that Roman eagle's wings and moved into a bunch of different areas around the world, and created city-states where they continue to rule today? And they do say all roads lead to Rome. Now, that's true and it's not, but this picture here, that picture there, that's the House of Representatives, right? You see the flag there in the middle, and then there's two symbols on either side of the flag. They're the same symbols, mirrored image of themselves. So what is that symbol? That's a Roman fasces. It is a symbol of Roman power. So what you see there, it's a bundle of sticks bound together, and in the middle there's an axe. Well, the bundle of sticks represents the law. In Roman days, some would say biblical days, sticks or books were known as sticks. People they called it, like the stick of Jacob and things like that. The stick of Judah, all these different sticks. That was another word for book. So those sticks bound together is a representation of Roman law, right? And it's bound together. Why is it bound together? Because it represents a legal system, and a legal system is what? Binding. It binds people. It's bondage. And so you have Roman law trying to bind people or put people into bondage, and then an axe in the middle that represents the power over life and death. In other words, we're going to decide the rules, and if you don't like it or you don't follow it, we might just, if we decide, we might just use the axe on you, right? So it's not a pleasant looking symbol to begin with, but and it was often carried in parades and stuff to show, hey, we're here, and you know, we're gonna make sure that you obey. It's forced rule, like the force, the force. They're gonna force rules on you. So may the force be with you. Maybe not the best thing. So that is a Roman fasces, and it is sitting in an American building. So if it's not the Roman government with a Roman architecture and Roman fasces, I don't know what you would call it, because that's what it is. It's a Roman government. So they say that we have a Republican Democratic Congress, RDC, which would also be Roman death cult, DC, death cult, right? The Roman death cult. So the Roman Egyptian death cult, how do we know it's a death cult? Well, DC, right? Death, coffin, death, casket. The whole thing was to hide truth, misdirection, to deceive people, right? So they say DC stands for District of Columbia. That way, everybody's attention is focused, okay, well, what was Columbia and all this kind of stuff. And so your attention is focused on that. Well, first of all, District of Columbia, district. It's a trick, a deception. They're a bunch of deceivers, right? Washington, D.C. They're not, politicians aren't known for being the most honest, truthful, guys in the world. Everybody says, they're politicians, they lie, And so what's the saying? How do you know if a politician is lying? They open their mouth. So the idea of saying, DC stands for District of Columbia was to misdirect people so that your attention wouldn't be thinking about what it actually is. That Roman fasces in that building, that again represents power over life and death. And who was it that killed Christ or the Savior in the biblical narrative? It was the Romans. And so DC, die Christ, death, crucifixion. That devil Constantine, when he called the Council of Nicaea and they formed Christianity, which was a religion that was starting to take root, and they knew they had to take over it and control it. In other words, like they did with the... if somebody is starting up something new, it happens a lot in corporate business. If a new corporate competition springs up, the first corporation, not springs up, let me not say springs up, because spring is actually a good term. But if there's a new corporate competition, the first corporation will say, send some people over there to get hired into that corporation, and slowly we can take over control of that corporation. And that happens in a lot of instances. And sometimes you'll hear in different ways, they call it a hostile takeover, which sometimes it just means they're just buying up the competition. But a lot of times they'll send people in as, corporate spying, that kind of thing. And the ultimate goal would be to ultimately take over the corporation, the new competition, or destroy it from within, which is what they've been doing with the United States for a long time. But it actually started in the very beginning. But it doesn't matter anyways, because it's the United States is part of the Roman Empire, so part of the Roman death cult. So we've got die Christ, death, crucifixion, the devil Constantine. Again, at the time, he needed the Christians to help fight and conquer other lands. And so if you've got a growing group, you do what the Romans always did: incorporate all the other religions and all the other gods, the Greco-Roman gods. They would take from other civilizations and adopt their religious beliefs into them and get their people to fight for them, saying, "Oh, we're fighting for God, the God that you know." And so that's what they did with Christianity. And so we've got Christ, death, crucifixion, devil Constantine, and then another DC, deceive the congregation, because that's what Constantine had to do to get the Christians to fight with him. And then you have what the government does, another DC, deceive citizens. And then you have another DC that the government does, divide and conquer. They say a house divided can't stand. A house divided against itself can't stand. And in the very beginning of the United States, they created the House of Representatives. A divided house can't stand, but what did they do? First thing they did is divided it, Republican and Democrat. A nation divided against itself, a house divided against itself. So DC, divide and conquer. And how do they divide and conquer? They did it with a Democratic Congress, DC. What's another way they divide and conquer? Well, they use dollars and cents to make rich and poor, upper class, middle class, and lower class. And then you have debt and credit, bond servants, financial servitude, legally binding agreements. Again, another form of bondage. That's the reason that money is made from paper that's made from cotton, because they created a nation of cotton-picking slaves. Everybody's picking cotton, trying to get that money, And they used to say slave and owner, but now they say employee and owner. Now, that's not the intended relationship for most employees and most business owners. But when you get into those big corporations and the government and stuff, they know exactly what they did. They just changed the name from slave to employee. And the slaves, they say, used to work in the fields. Well, they work in the fields today. What field of employment do you work in? Right? So, and then the last one there is you have a Declaration and Constitution. DC, right? Constitution. It's a trick, like Congress, conquer, congregation, Constantine, because it all started with him in the Roman Empire. Now, they borrowed stuff from the Egyptians and any other successful tactic of domination over people. They borrowed from other cultures and societies. That's where, cult comes from, culture, these different cultures. Well, the culture that we have in this society is a death cult, the Roman cult. So, actually, it's the Roman Egyptian death cult. Look at the word constitution. You see Tut right in the middle there? Constitution, right? And look what's on the dollar bill. There's a pyramid. So King Tut and the pyramid and the Constitution. Why did they have the pyramid on there? It's a pyramid scheme. The Romans the Egyptians were the first one to really, I hate to use the word perfect slavery, but they were the ones who really, and I don't want to say got good at slavery, because slavery is not good and it's certainly not a perfect thing, but that's what they did, man. They got very, they perfected slavery, and the Romans did as well, because they borrowed from the Egyptians, and that's why it's the Roman Egyptian death cult. And so, both the Romans and the Egyptians were known for their many different gods. So you have like the House of Representatives, okay, First, we'll start with House of Representatives, HOR, and it's for the United States, for us, right? For we the people, us, we, U.S. And so Horus, right, is an Egyptian god. It's one of the gods they use in government. And then you have the House of Representatives, THOR, and that's a Greco-Roman god, Thor, right? And he's got a brain manipulation power of authority, right? The power to rule over and control the lives of other people by using a little brain manipulation power. You write stuff down and you say this is the right thing to do, and you tell people these are your rights even though you're the one that wrote it for them or they're the one that wrote it for you. And then they say, we're going to read you your rights, or we're going to tell you what your rights are, or these are your rights as a U.S. citizen, or any of these kind of things, or any of those sorts of things. And you go, well, okay, that's my rights. But you didn't write it. They did. And so it's mental manipulation. That's why it's called Washington, D.C. Brainwashington, D.C. Brainwashing, right? Brainwashing, which is actually another deceptive word because they're actually polluting your brain. They're filthying up your brain. Roman, so I don't like saying this often because when I clean windows I have to use rags, but I'm not part of the Roman cult. But Roman architecture government, RAG, deceivers, filthy rags that they talk about in the Bible, right? Your good works are as filthy rags. That's because there's a little truth in the Bible and a lot of deception. But that's one of the truth is that, these governments, their good works are as filthy rags because they're Roman architecture governments. And Romans are the ones who did what? Crucifixion. They crucify people, right? And so you have the gods Horus and then Thor. So you have Roman and Egyptian gods. And then there's the god of Mammon, the god of Moloch, Anubis, Ares, various different gods. The bull gods, Bible, Torah, Toro, Taurus, the bull, the Bible, the golden bull. But so the idea is they hide this stuff in plain sight. One, so that you see it, and because it's so polluted with filth, because it's been so manipulated and the deception is so intense that people they can present truth to people with just enough deception that people will deny truth and accept the lies. And that's what they've gotten very good at. Kings and rulers and dictators and leaders throughout time have passed this information along to each other so that they can better control the next generation of people. And so if you're trying to hide something in plain sight, if you're hiding things, misdirection, you're deceiving people. Or, with Washington, D.C., deceiving people. And if you deceive people, you don't want them to see. In other words, you don't want them to see what the truth actually is, or you don't want them to see the truth for what it actually is. Thus, DC is also another magic spell, and that's a thing we should talk about real quick. If you don't want people to know what magic is, then you tell them magic is something different, so that their attention is misdirected. And that's the thing about magic. So if I say to you, magic is making a coin disappear, a magic trick, or pulling a rabbit out of a hat, or stuff like that, then you think that's what magic is. Or if I tell you magic is voodoo and that kind of stuff, now there might be some magic involved in it, but it keeps your attention focused on that instead of what the real magic is that is used, not real magic, just the magic that they used most often is deception and spells, magic spells, where they where you say something and don't realize what you're saying because they've spelled it in a different way, like DC. Well, what if you said it a different way? DC. That means you can't see no more. DC, no see, can't see. Made blind. See, the maid is blind. She's blind. She can't see that she's got death in her hands, a sword in one hand and the scales of a serpent in another hand. So, she's made blind. And how's she made blind? With a blindfold. See, what kind of fold? A blindfold. Now, are you a part of the fold? Ah, yeah. Are you a part of the fold? Are you a part of the flock? Are you one of the sheep? You know, or as some channels might say, are you one of the sheeple? And unknown to them, they follow blindly because they have been deceived, right? To be part of the fold. And they want to be part of the fold. Are you a part of the fold? And so they have been deceived. That's why they have the word you. So we have you, but we also have you, which is sheep, and we also have you. And that you is a plant. It's a bush, kind of a tree thing, and it's called a yew plant. And it is a part of the plant family taxes. Have you paid your taxes? Your Roman taxes. Have you paid your Roman taxes? Are you a part of the fold? Are you so blind that you can't see that it's the Roman cult that's leading you? Right? So, they've tricked everybody with all these magic spells. Why are they doing that? They say they represent you, but who do they actually work for? Who do they actually work for? Who do they represent? So, got the Bohemian Grove, right? We know that's the world leaders. That's the government leaders and the corporate leaders of the world. So we have the Bohemian Club and the Bohemian Grove and their sacrifice ceremony called the cremation of care, right? And then you have the Owl and Key Society, another one of the secret societies of the owl. Why do they use the owl in these secret societies? Now they'll call them, and I've had people say, oh, that's an honorary society. Yeah, that's why they tell you, oh, it's a secret, like Bush and Kerry, you know? What did they say? What can you tell us about the Skull and Bones? And the Owl and Key Society, by the way, is an alumni society of Skull and Bones. In order to be a member of Owl and Key, the Owl and Key Society, you had to first be a member of Skull and Bones. And what do they say about Skull and Bones? What can you tell us about Skull and Bones? Not much, because it's a secret. You know, so who do these guys work for? So here, have a look. There's the Capitol building, and the walkways around it look like what? They look like a big giant owl. Why do the walkways around the Capitol building, the Roman Capitol building, why do they look like an owl? Well, there's a verse in the Bible talking about the screech owl. And the screech owl shall rest there and find herself a place of rest. It's talking about not a good place. And so how do we know for sure that that's what that is? Well, the Washington, D.C. has a baseball team. And it's called the Washington Capitals. And guess what the name of their eagle is? Their mascot? Guess what the name is? Screech. The screech owl shall rest there and find herself a place. You see how they mix a little truth with a lie? You know, they call it screech, but it's an eagle that actually represents the owl there in the Capitol. The Washington Capitals. So, again, we talk about, you know, the Roman church buildings, right? So these buildings are Roman as well, right? So we have Roman design and architecture, whether it's, First Baptist Church or Church of Christ or stuff like that. Not that all these churches and all the pastors are bad, not that the congregants are bad. It's a bunch of people being deceived. Some of them. Some of these pastors and some of these loved names in Christianity are people that know. They're part of it, and they're there to lead people into that fold, into the blindfold, knowingly and deceptively. So here we've got the uniquely American religion, the Mormon Church Administrative Building. This is where the leader of the Mormon Church and the top leadership all work and meet and spend their days. And this building, these fire cauldrons in the front of the building, those are crucifiers, because that's what the Romans were. They were Roman crucifiers. You don't get any more Roman than this building here. And they tax their members, and they're collecting a Roman tax. It's a percentage tax, 10%, just like the government does a percentage tax, And so the Roman Mormon Church here is just the United States version of the Roman Catholic Church, which is a sole corporation, right? And it's about controlling souls. Now they use a magic spell, S-O-L-E, but the subterfuge or the underlying meaning of that is soul, S-O-U-L, because they are trying to capture as many souls as possible. So you have the Roman Catholic Church of England, and then you have the Roman Mormon Church of the United States. And why did they adopt all this Roman, why did Christian churches, supposedly Christian churches, adopt a Roman theme here, either in name or in design and leadership style? Why did they adopt the Roman motif? And the reason that is Romania. Now, I'm going to mention certain places and things and stuff like that. That doesn't mean Romania is a bad place. That doesn't mean the Romanian people are bad people. It's just that's where Dracula is from. They have a different name for him in history, but people call him Dracula. A vampire. It comes from Romania. Count Dracula, Why? Because he's counting money, first of all, and desiring death. That's why money comes from the Bureau of Engraving, and we'll talk about that here in a minute. So, Romania is where Dracula, the story of Dracula is from. So why is that important? What's the connection there? Romania, Dracula, Christianity, and adopting this Roman motif, whether it's the little churches or the big corporate churches or the Roman Catholic Church or any of that. Why all this Roman motif? Because the Romans were the ones that killed the guy that's supposed to be the good guy in their story. Because they mix a little truth with a bunch of lies. The Catholic Eucharist, or Eucharist, also called communion and other Christian churches, sacrament, and other ones. Sacrament of sacrifice, a vampire ritual instituted by Jesus Barabbas, where people are told that they should eat in remembrance of the body of the Savior and drink in remembrance of his blood. They're pretending to eat somebody's body and drink the blood. If you're trying to remember blood while you're drinking in remembrance of the blood. It's a vampire ritual, and it was instituted by Jesus Barabbas and credited to Jesus of Nazareth as a deception, a way to deceive people. They told you it was Jesus the Savior that started that because they want to deceive you. But you got to think about that. Eat somebody's body and drink their blood. Here, eat this bread, it's my body. Here, drink this wine, it's my blood, or water, as in the Mormon church. Why do they use water instead of wine in the Mormon church? Well, they say because of alcohol. But really, what it is they're mental prisoners. And what do prisoners have in medieval times or ancient days? Bread and water. And so that's what they eat. They eat a prisoner's meal because they're mentally imprisoned. Actually, the whole world is. There are some similarities to the movie Matrix, but the Matrix was a little bit deceiving as well. But anyways, so all of this was about deceiving you. Getting people to follow blindly. So the government is a religion as well. So you have two religions. We actually have three. Church and state. You also have science. Science is another religion. It's not the best thing, but it's not nearly as destructive as church and state. Church and state is not the separation of two different things. It's the separation of two of the same sorts of things. They're both religions. The religion of church and the religion of state. See her church. And her church is from the serpent tree ate, the state. That's why, in the biblical narrative, you see, this religion was founded on this religion, right? And it uses a bunch of other religions, but in the biblical story, Eve ate from the tree. The serpent tree ate. Why did they do that? Because they wanted to be like God. They wanted to make themselves gods. And so that's exactly what you have with the Senate and the House of Representatives. The sin ate, and the House of Representatives, THOR, because they ate because they wanted to make themselves gods. So, government is just another religion. In fact, you can see that very easily demonstrated with like statues such as George here, with a sword pointed as and why has he got a sword in his hand pointed directly at him? And why does Lady Justice have a sword in her hand? And why do all these statues have swords in their hands? Because this is another saying in the Bible that was attributed to Jesus the Savior, Jesus of Nazareth, Jesus the Savior, when it was actually said by Jesus Barabbas. Think not that I come to bring peace. I do not bring peace, but a sword. Right? And that's why they are always in war, whether it's spiritual warfare or spiritual war, right? Which is what religions say all the time. And that spiritual is a magic spell. Spirit you all war. Spirit you all war, right? Getting people to have a warring mind and spirit mentality. We're under attack. We're being persecuted. Attack them, avenge our God and all these kind of things. It puts people in a warring sense of mind. Matter of fact, they have songs like Christian soldiers marching is to war, and the battle hymn of the Republic with God and His mighty, terrible, swift sword. It's putting people in a mental state of war, and so religions think every other religion hates each other and stuff like that. It's the religions that they're only have different religions to get people to argue and hate and despise one another, because what they see is that it's a human family, that we are a human family, one family, God's family, and they don't want that. what they want is everybody divided. That's why they gave everybody different last names, so that you would think my family, his family, her family, their family, instead of one family or human family. They gave us all these systems: political system, religious system, judicial systems, financial systems, all these systems. We put all these systems together. We made all this contention with one another when we could have just made heaven. And religions use that to manipulate the members of their different various religions to feel angst against other peoples, to feel threatened by other peoples, because they want people to live in fear. That's why they taught you that God wants you to be God-fearing people. God is love. He doesn't want you to fear him. I can assure you, God doesn't want you to fear him. He loves you very much. So then we also have the Capitol Rotunda. There's a painting in the top of the Capitol Rotunda. That painting is called the Apotheosis of Washington. You know what the word apotheosis is? It means the deification or making of a god. It's turning someone or something into a god. And so this painting is called the Apotheosis of Washington, turning George Washington or Washington, D.C. into a god that people serve, right? You serve them via taxation, and taxation makes up the majority of cost in anything. You may not think so, but if you start with a loaf of bread, it gets taxed at the store, and then the manufacturer who makes the bread gets taxed when they sell it to the store, and so that's added into the cost. And the guy that drives the bread to the store gets taxed by his income, and that income gets figured into the cost, and that tax gets figured into the cost, and the tax that the farmer pays, and the tax that the farmer pays on the tractor, and the fuel for the tractor, and all these different things, and all those taxes add up and make up maybe 90 to 99% of the cost of anything. You can say, well, I added on this much profit. Well, that's because it's a religion, right? And religion seeks profits, right? It's the religion of mammon. We'll get to that in a minute. So, the Apotheosis of Washington. So, they are saying that, they're making Washington a god. And where did Washington get its land? From two states. From the Virgin Mary. Right? The Virgin Mary. And that's why they want you to record your birth. And so they have mothers turn over their children's soul, right, to the devil's church. So they want you to record the birth. Why? Because it's record. You're recording a new umbilical cord or unbiblical cord, a new umbilical cord into the Virgin Mary of the Roman death cult. And they will print the feet of the child so that the first place that their child's foot lands is not on the ground, not on the, any of that, is on ink, right? Because they're incorporating the child's name. And that's when they put the child's name in all capital letters. Why? Because capital has to do with money. Capital, right? Capital money, capital heal, capital, and they change the spelling just a little, but it's all about capital. It's all about money. They're the ones that issue the money. So they take the footprint. Why do they take the footprint of the children? Because they're trying to steal the soul. Now, ink was originally made using iron sulfate, because that also is a magic spell, iron sulfate. And iron is a form of steel. They're trying to steal the soul of the child. And so they record the birth in vital records. Well, if you're recording it in vital records, take that and you have in and then vite all record. They're inviting all people to record into the Virgin Mary of the D.C. Roman death cult, Devil's Church. It's the Devil's Church. Now, the devil is known for leading people into darkness. So let's talk about that. Let's talk about symbolism of the Roman cult. So we start with the blindfold, right? That's darkness. You can't see with a blindfold on. You're in the dark, right? Some people like to be kept in the dark, like members of the Mormon church. They don't mind not knowing what their church does with the money. They don't mind that the church was hiding billions of dollars in shell corporations. They don't mind that. It doesn't bother them. They don't mind being in the dark. Many people, whether it's in the LDS corporate church or around the world in their various different religions and governments, don't mind being kept in the dark. They have closed sessions in government, right? But people don't seem to mind that. So we go and we look at this picture of this walkway in the shape of an owl, right? We talked about the screech owl shall rest there and find herself a place of rest. So here's this walkway in the shape of an owl. We have the Bohemian Grove. We have the Owl and Key Society. And we have the $1 bill, and it has that little owl up there in the corner of it there, right? So the owl is what? What kind of bird is the owl? The owl is a bird of night, right? It's a bird. Now they use a magic spell, N-I-G-H-T, but night, right? A bird of night. What's the other symbolism we have with the United States? We have a flag here, and it's got stars on it. When do you see stars? You see stars at nighttime, right? So you have stars at nighttime, perhaps fallen stars, because stars you should see in the sky, but they brought them down to earth, and there they are on the flag. They're also on the military, the mule from the wrong tree. What tree? The tree of death. They say the knowledge of good and evil, but in that day they will surely what? Die. It's the tree of death. It's the opposite of the other tree, the tree of life. So you have the tree of life and the death, but they want you to think knowledge of good and evil. But if you thought about that, you would think about the apple and the symbol of the education system of the United States. And if you slice open an apple, what will you find inside? The shape of a star. Not the apples are bad. It's just one of the representations that they use in their little, massive subterfuge of the human family. Massive deceiving of the human family. So you have military stars, right? And a meal from the wrong tree. And that's why they wear helmets, right? Because they're people that met hell. And so why do they use stars? Because of constellation, right? Helmets and stars in the military and star generals and star badges and all these different star symbols and fraternal societies and stuff with these, stars. And look at this star, right? And they're all about the constellation of Aries. What is Aries? Well, Aries is the ram. Remember that, the ram. And Aries is also the god of war. Military stars. It's a constellation for the military. So we've got owls and we've got stars. Both of those things are seen at night. Well, what about coins? Right? Coins, those are little representations of the man and the moon. Right? The little silvery man and the moon. And so now we got the man and the moon. The moon, we got the owl, We've got the moon and the stars. And that is all symbols of night for Adam's nation, a damnation led into the darkness of night, the United States. Of course, we also have the United Kingdom and the United Arab Emirates, 666. The United. So church and state, they're both biblically known as stiff-necked. The stiff-necked people for their stiff-neckedness, right? And stiff-necked deceivers. Stiff-necked deceivers is a better way to say that. So it's all alchemy. Now they say that alchemy is turning lead into gold, taking one metal and turn it into another. I'm sure they'd try and do that. If they don't already figure it out, I'm sure that's something that they try. But really what alchemy is, that's just misdirection. That's a story told so that you would have your attention focused somewhere else, when the truth is turning lead into gold is a magic spell. It's actually turning lead into gold. They're leading people led into the darkness of night, and that becomes very profitable for them. It's a religion, remember? And this is also another one of the gods, the god of Mammon, and prophets leading you into the fold, because it's they're trying to make a bunch of profit, because profit is about death, death of the human family. In terms of, let me rephrase that. It's the destruction of people's thinking of each other and seeing each other as the human family. So prophets, right? Prophets leading you into the fold, the blindfold, and the flagfold. And prophets, that PH in the middle of prophets, that PH makes the false sound of an F. It's the false F, right? P-R-O. P makes it P, P, and H makes it H, H. And so those are false prophets leading people astray. That's why in the Roman Church, they falsify the documents. False prophets falsifying documents to falsify prophets of the false prophets. And that's what all these things do. It's the Roman death cult. Now, talking about prophets and taxation and stuff, what's another clue that we have that these guys are Romans? So Romans were the crucifiers, right? What are the last three letters of crucifiers? IRS. And what do you see on the IRS logo? You see that Roman eagle there. They say it's an American eagle, but it came from the Roman Empire. And that's a Roman fasces with the Roman eagle. They're the crucifiers, the IRS, because they love to collect taxes. Roman crucifiers love taxes. They're Roman taxes. And so there's the Roman eagle on the flagpole, and again for their Roman taxes. Now, where else do you see the same symbols? Where do you see the same symbols? Well, look at this. That's Hitler. And Hitler was known as a Nazi. Now, when you say Nazi, what are you actually saying? You're saying Nazi. Nazi. I not see. You're not using a Z, you're using an S. Nazi. Right? Nazi. Because they're blind. They didn't see what they were doing was wrong. Just like the people in the United States don't see that a lot of the things that they're doing is wrong. And so the Nazis used German shepherds. And what do you see? German shepherds. Why a German shepherd? That's a bad shepherd, right? Well, who is a bad shepherd? Jesus, the one they mix all together with Jesus of Nazareth without saying it in the biblical narrative. So, why are they doing all this? They're making their own version of God. They're mixing the truth mixed with deceptiveness, and making God into a God of animal, their own creation of a God of animal and human sacrifice, a God that requires death sacrifice, a ritualistic God that requires death. That's why they build those little volcano replica altars. Those altars, they say they're for, sacrifices to the Lord or burnt offerings and stuff like that. Those are little representations. They're little miniature replica volcano altars. No volcano nearby? That's all right. Just build one. Set it on fire and throw some dead animals on it. Throw some animals on it, and there's your sacrifice to the volcano. Right? They're sacrificing, and so what kind of God? They created a Lord God. Not a God of love, a Lord God. What's a Lord God? Well, what's lore? It's a story, it's a tale, it's a folk tale. You've been folklored, right? And a Lord is an anagram or for LORD, law of religion deceivers, or law of Republican, the Roman Republican democracy, law of the Roman democracy, law of the Republican democracy. Same thing. It's the Lord. And it's not actually a democracy, it's a remocracy, because they continually are re-mocking God. They're mocking God with their Virgin Mary and their crucifixion, right? Their sacrifices. And they didn't stop with Jesus on the cross. They've got fields of crucifixion, fields of sacrifice. He sacrificed his life for our country. No, the Roman cult sacrificed him so that people would continually live in fear. Otherwise, why would you say that? People say, "Oh, they're fighting for our freedom." Really, is the country more free now than it was? Because it seems to be less free. In fact, free has two definitions: without cost or payment, and not under the forced or coerced control of another. Well, cost or payment certainly is not, doesn't fit for a free country, not with the United States, because everything, just about everything costs something, and with the cost of everything going up, that's not free. And then you have not under the forced or coerced control of another. Well, is that true? Why is there all these laws that are written to tell you what to do and enforced at the point of a gun? So it's not a free country, it's freedom, right? They just gave you a magic spell so you wouldn't hear what you're actually saying. Freedom. Let freedom ring, right? Register. Have you registered your child with the government? So, Lord is a bad word, right? So it started with, lords a long time ago. The landlords, they owned the land, and everybody that lived on the land had to pay the lord their taxes, and the lord paid tribute to the king, right? But everybody that lived on the Lord's land were the peasants. And so you had landlords. Well, what's another lord? A drug lord. How about a slumlord or a warlord or Lord Vader? Lord is not a good, there's no good thing with Lord. It's just, sometimes it's written, and it's sometimes very poetic in the Bible, the Lord is my shepherd and all these kind of things. Well, think about shepherd, right? You see that kind of shepherd. But it's written very poetically and sometimes can actually sound very nice, even comforting at times the way that it's written. But look at all lords throughout society that have ever been perceived by mankind, and they're not the best of folks. And so you have those church and state, the religions, right? The tree of death has three branches: judicial, legislative, and executive. Now that tree is the tree from the garden, right? It's the tree of death. It has three branches: judicial, legislative, and executive. Why judicial? Because the Jewish priests, the Jewish rabbis, and the Jewish leaders, religious leaders, were oppressive to their own people. They put 613 laws, which is nothing compared to what Washington has done through the legislative and judicial branches. But the tree of death has three branches. It's the devil's tree. Remember, it's the devil's church, a death cult: judicial, legislative, and executive. Now, how can we show that these branches are all about death? Well, first of all, the word executive, if you take the Ivy off the end, like the Ivy League schools and their honorary secret societies, that's execute. All right? So judicial is represented with black robes. Legislative is represented with black ink. They're the ones that write the laws. And the executive, the president and the police and the military, is represented with black powder. They're the ones with the guns. So, and all this is black magic. Black robes, I'll control what happens here. Black ink for magic spells and controlling people, which is a serpent, right? Men that pick up a pen and try and control and rule the lives of other people. Excuse me, sir, what are you doing with that pen? Well, I just penned some laws here, and now these rules that I made are rules. They're your rules now. You have to follow them. I wrote them, but these are your rights, and these are your obligations, and I'm controlling people's lives. And that's the abolishment of equality. That's a serpent. And they are writing on paper, parchment and paper and stuff. And so that's, paper is made from what? Paper is made from trees. The pulp from trees. And so that's a serpent on a tree. Right? So we got black robes, black ink, and then black powder. And all of that together is black magic. Black powder, I'll make you dead from over here. I can kill somebody from over here. I can hurt you from over here. Way far away I can hurt you. I don't even have to stand right next to you. I don't have to put my arms around you. I can use this black powder, and just from here to there you'll be dead. All right? And so all that is black magic. And that's why judges summons people. You have a serpent, and then death. And so you have robes, ink, and again, I said I would mention things. There's nothing wrong with the color black. Black is a fine color. It's just the color that they chose to use in their representation. They could have chosen any color, but they chose black because that's what you see when you're blind, when you've been deceived, when you're led into the dark. All those ways of thinking. That's the color they chose. But robes, ink, and powder. R for robes, ink, I, and P for powder. R-I-P. And what does that represent? Death. Remember, we're talking about the Roman death cult. Rip. That's what you see on a grave. And that's where the word scriptures come from. Script, yours, right? And then crypt, right? A crypt is where dead people are. And a script is what serpents write, you know. Now, a lot of doctors are really good doctors, trying to really just do their best and love people and take care of them. But that profession was started by serpents, right? That's why pharmacy has the word harm in it. So it's black magic. It's the black plague, the black death. You know? And that's what the yin yang is. It's government and it's church and state. Yin yang. The government is the one that dresses in black, and the state is the one that dresses in black, and the church one is the one that dresses in white. And why are they going like this? Because they work together. They feed off of each other and work together without actually working together. Sometimes even bickering and arguing with one another. But that's Satan's house, and it's divided, right? It's always been like that. The devil's house. Maybe Satan isn't the best word. I don't know. Okay, so I said I was going to talk about this. We got money. And money is made from paper that's made from cotton. And that's because it's a representation of slavery. A nation of cotton-picking slaves. They told you slavery was abolished. It never was abolished. It was just renamed to the workforce. Now you're part of the workforce, which is actually forced work, because they've created a financial system where instead of being a human family where everybody just does everything because they love each other, the Amish are real close to doing some of that. Now, it's a cult as well. They won't admit it. A lot of other people wouldn't call it that, but that's exactly what it is. But where they get together and they help each other, you know, everybody knows about Amish barn raisings, right? And they all just get together and they help each other. They don't make each other pay for it. They just do it as part of the Amish community. But it's something that the human family used to do before governments and religions took over. You can see remnants of that also in some like tribal communities where they don't use money. And what do you see with like those tribes in Africa all the time? Lots of smiles, right? Because they're not an oppressed people. And they don't have financial worries, legal worries. They're not in bondage. They don't have legally binding agreements. They don't have financial institutions saying they're going to take something that belongs to them, any of that kind of stuff. I once had a car repossessed after I had paid for more than half of the car. Now, why did they get it when I've paid more than half? Why shouldn't they be waiting for me to pay them? I ultimately did pay the car off, but they'll take it up. Even if you have only one payment, they'll take your car. If you only have one payment left to pay off the car, they'll take it. But you've paid for most of the car, not the bank. By that time, they've already been paid in full plus interest. But that's what this financial system is. It's bondage. And so the money comes from the Bureau of Engraving. Why is it called the Bureau of Engraving? Because those are engraven images. They're images of people in graves. They're engraven images. That's where dead people are, in graves, right? And so that's what the tree of death was. Remember, they were going to die if they ate from the tree. Well, this is part of that government tree. And why did they die? Well, take the word money and look at it backwards, and then just take the tail off the Y. Right? And what do you see? You see venom. Money backwards is venom. That's why there's a payment platform called Venmo. It's an anagram of venom, and venom is an anagram of money. And there's another payment platform called Patreon. Well, listen to the words. Patreon. It's a magic spell so that you don't hear what you say when you're saying it. You say Patreon, and you look at it and you say, this is the word I'm saying. But if you say it and said it to someone who was just learning English, they would tell you, you just said Patreon. And who was on the tree? Well, the serpent was on the tree, wasn't he? And what does a serpent have? Venom. So, then we have the House of Representatives. And inside the House of Representatives were the Roman fasces, that symbol of life, the power over life and death, which is actually a symbol of, meaning a symbol of death. And sticks were used often to beat people with. And that's a representation of the books, you know, hit them over the head, right? Throw the book at them, that sort of thing, sticks and stones. So, in the House of Representatives, they have all these these stone images, carved images out of stone. They're called reliefs. The Mormon Church has a relief society, but these are reliefs, and you'll see. You know, this is the relief of Moses. Now, these are some ancient pictures of Moses before the modern narrative. This is what people knew about Moses. They had him with horns because they figured him for an evil guy. Why? Because the law of Moses was given to people in the form of 2 stone tablets, the shape of what? Tombstones. Burial stones. Stones of death. Right? And the law of Moses is an anagram for a wolf. Be careful of wolves in sheep's clothing. Guys in really expensive wool suits trying to make you think, or people dressed trying to make you think that they're just like you, when what they're trying to do is use you. That's what they're trying to do. And so they want people to follow the law of a wolf. So where did it all come from? So we said, well, it comes from ancient Rome, the ancient Roman Empire. It comes from the Egyptians. They got this system of slavery, and the Masons, right? So they're known for geometry, right? The square, the compass, and the square. There's a business meaning to that too. A long time ago, they used to call business transaction business intercourse. And for those folks who are a little discerning with the compass and square, you can start to think about what that might represent. And that has to do with the Argyle pattern and being open for business and being entranced. You go into a business entrance and in trance. And why? Because it's the oldest business in the world. Horus, right? Whore. The great whore. Talked about in the Bible. So, and it's about idolatry, right? Geometry and idolatry. People that idol a tree, the tree that the serpent was on. Serpent on a tree. And these people, they make oaths. Now, again, I told you how the Bible mixes true things with lies. One of the true things in there was people shouldn't make oaths. And so what does governments and some religions do, like the Mormon religion and stuff? They raise their arm to the square to make oaths. Why is the square? Well, it has to do with the masonry, but it goes all the way back to, you know, they're making the shape of an L, like the law. The L starts, you know, the word law starts with the L, and that capital L, has that arm to the square shape. And it goes back to those pyramids. Those pyramids were triangles on a square base for the Egyptians. And so they would make oaths in Egypt to the Pharaoh. And so in the Roman Empire, here in America, you have the 10 square miles of Washington, D.C. So they're raising their arm to the square and making an oath to serve the devil's church. And in the Mormon church, they raise their arm to the square during baptisms, and in temples, when they're doing what kind of work? Work for the dead. Right? They do a temple dedication ceremony where they spell it D-E-D so that you don't hear what you're saying when you say it, but what they pronounce is dead. So they do a temple dedication ceremony, and they do work for the dead. And the only way to be a worthy member of the Mormon church is to pay money that comes from the Bureau of Engraving. And an engraves is where what? Dead people are. So it's work for the dead. Right? They're working for the dead. And so they raise their arm again to the square. And it all has to do with the Egyptians and the Romans and the death cult religion of the devil's church. And so you have all the governments around the world. Many of them have been taken over or infiltrated or influenced by the Roman government. And you can see that in the architecture. And you'll see the Masonic influence wherever you hear that word square, like Red Square and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And what is this all about? It's about death and sacrifice, financial riches, power, financial power, and violent power. And why do they want that? Because they desire that everybody live in fear. Fear of the Lord, the law of the Republican democracy, or the law of the religious deceivers. They desire control, control, right? It's a trick. It's a deception to deceive you to control your life and everything that you're able to produce. They make sure they get a part of it, whether it's your work time or whatever. So they desire that. They want to abolish equality of the human family, the quality of love. They want to abolish that. Equality is a family quality. It's a quality of love. It says, I'm not your ruler. I'm not the boss over you. We're family. What we're here for is to make our life experience the best for each other that we can possibly do. That's what family is. That's not their desire. Their desire is to make everybody make servitude for them, because they want everything. They want everything. They want every dollar. They want every nice thing. They want to have all of it. They only want to leave enough to keep you working for them. And why do they use working? To keep you working, but not anymore. You working for them. So instead of saying that everybody is a king with a crown, the crown of your head, instead of saying everybody is a king, it's the abolishment of that equality in favor of the false god Thor with the brain manipulation, power, authority, and the idea of authority and subordinate instead of equality. And so I think we kind of proved that everybody's being deceived by the Roman Empire, the Roman Egyptian death cult, in just about every way possible, religiously, financially, economically, politically, all this kind of stuff. And a lot of this stuff inserted into the lives of our human family that never needed to be there, never should have been there. All these systems. I like to do this at the end of a video. I like to talk to you just as a human family. And I like to say this thing that all these systems, all these financial systems, political systems, religious systems, judicial systems, legal systems, all these things, we don't need any of it. We're the human family. We have the opportunity and the ability to make heaven together. Instead of making all these financial systems, we can just make heaven. And we can live the gift of living instead of the cost of living. We can live as the human family instead of the human race. And I say, people should really, instead of being deceived, learn to see. They say heaven is in the clouds. That's where we live. We live in the clouds. We should be living as the human family. We should make heaven. All we have to do is plan it better. Let's planet heaven.